Friends, here is a field, actually a plowed open field where hogs have done a bunch of damage. Now, a neighbor of mine, a good friend, what would a hog camp meal be without some wild pork slowly smoked?
Whitetail deer are kind of the mainstay of North American hunting. As a walleye biologist, I spent a lot of time working on whitetail deer, setting up management programs.
Welcome to A Sportsman's Life. We're so glad you tuned in to join us for another exciting real-world outdoor adventure right here on A Sportsman's Life.
Well, friends, it is the morning after, and behind me back here is the field where I shot that big boar last night. He ran into some area that I do not have access to. It's posted land and no way to find him, but I want to take you out here and show you some of the damage that these hogs do. Farmer buddy of mine, a neighbor, lets me hunt this field back here and all back in here, but I do not have access back up to the kind of to the south, and guess which way that rascal ran? He's probably back in there, but let's go out in the field. Let me show you what damage these things do, and then I'll tell you a little something about private property, especially here in Texas. Friends, here is a field, actually a plowed open field where hogs have done a bunch of damage. Now, a neighbor of mine, a good friend, the farmer, rancher out in this area, allows me to hunt this land. Big boar that you saw me shoot with that Umarex hammer was right over there. But just look at some of the damage. You can imagine why farmers dislike wild hogs. This was a big boar that did this. Just check that out. Imagine when it's grown up and running over that with a tractor. Wild hogs, especially big boar, can do a tremendous amount of damage in a very short time. Now, that hog was standing that you just saw right in here on that little, well, that's actually a big area that he tore up, and he ran this direction right here. And if you watch that video real close, you saw he exited this field into those woods. Now, I do not have permission to hunt back there or to even get on the property. It's posted property. That's what I want to talk to you about. When you cross property lines, make sure that you have permission to get over there. That hog hit with that Umarex hammer, 350 grain Alco bullet at about 45 yards right behind the sheath. Didn't run far. I'd wager a bet he's probably not over 150, 200 yards back in there, but I cannot go and retrieve him. Trust me, I would love to photograph that big boar. There's probably no probably to it. That's the biggest boar I've ever shot. And imagine being last night out in the middle of this big field here, right there, and sneaking up within 45 yards of that big old boar. I'll tell you, my adrenaline was definitely pumping. And looking back, I wonder how smart it was, because there, as you see, there are no trees. The tree line's way back over here. But be careful when you're hunting. It's not uncommon, even if that hog had been shot with a 30-06, for him to run at least a couple of hundred yards. I've seen it happen a million times. Do not doubt the power of that Umarex hammer. I mean, he was hit hard with a 350 grain soft point bullet. So we always vow to tell it like it is here on the Sportsman's Life. Real world outdoors. This is real world, folks. You don't know how much I'd love to cross that fence and go back in there about 150 feet and recover that boar and take pictures, but I can't do it. On to the rest of our show.
Brought to you by Dallas Safari Club, Conservation, Education, and Hunter Advocacy. Hornaday, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus Firearms, maker of the Raging Hunter. Trigicon, brilliant aiming solutions.
Well, folks, this is Luke out of the picture, and Mr. Jeff is filming this, but I want to give you a recipe. I can't pronounce this Mexican dish. It's Chalaquillas is pretty close to it. But you need a can of Las Palmas green chili enchilada sauce, and you need 10 corn tortillas cut into 1-inch strips. I just laid them down and cut them into 1-inch strips. So this is the start of the recipe right here. Let's walk over here, Jeff, and we're actually cooking, as the recipe says, these little strips, the corn tortilla strips. Basically just fry them. It takes just a couple of minutes. And there you say, well, why don't you just use corn chips? Well, the flavor of these fresh ones is way better. So let me grab the dish there. These are just about ready. And of course, I'll do them all like this. I'll fry all of them up. Let these get a little bit more crispy, I think. And then this is the start of it. You have to get these things ready, and they're already crispy. So we'll just drain these things. And you can see how crisp. You can tell they're already crispy. So anyway, basically, I don't have to bore you cooking them all, but we're going to take all 10 of these corn tortillas and we're going to fry them up crispy, and then we'll carry on with the next step next. Okay, folks. Now, what would a hog camp meal be without some wild pork slowly smoked? To put that in the smoking tanks, that was a piece of a ham that cooked about 12 hours, but we've got some onions sauteed. Now, the recipe didn't call for this, the pork, but I'm thinking this is actually going to wind up being enchiladas in a skillet, really, when we get through. Corn tortillas, that's the ones that we fried, and these things, I'm going to show you, these things are crisp. So let's just put these in there. Put them in there like this. Now then, because we have an onion and these chips on top. Now, the Las Palmas green chilies enchilada sauce. We're going to fold that in there with it. Cut our heat up a little bit higher. Okay, so that's green chilies. Now, top it with cheese of your, we're going to use some Mexican style 4 different styles of cheese. Top
Just
that.
the aroma coming off there, buddy.
It's smelling good, isn't it? So honestly, Jeff, this is the first time I've actually cooked this, but it looks like enchiladas in a skillet, doesn't it?
It sure does.
So this is just a package of cheese in there, and it'll all cook down, and we will just kind of get it all broke down here. But it's
hungry already.
I think that pork, that smoked pork, is going to add something to this.
Well, you better believe it.
Got
That's
to,
good
hasn't
stuff
it?
right there.
So let's just let her melt, and then I guess we'll come back and show a bowl of this stuff being devoured. Jeff, what do you think?
You bet. I'm in. I'm first.
But it's already, I think you could eat this once that cheese melts right there, and you'd be ready to go. New dish for hog camp.
Oh yeah.
What I did add that the recipe did not call for is meat. What would be wrong with this good smoked pork in it?
Absolutely.
I think that's going to add a lot.
I think that was probably a good call to add that.
And in onions, it said to put cilantro, and I like cilantro, but didn't have any. But you could, from there, you could just the sky's the limit. You could put cilantro or whatever. But this is what we'll have. We'll let it melt, Jeff. We'll have.
Well, folks, I had to come back before we head out to work on blinds. We are eating, and this is fantastic.
Sportsman's Life is also brought to you by the YO Steakhouse, Catch and Release Apparel, AGM Global Vision, H3 Whitetail Solutions, and Pyramid Air.
Hello, sports fans. Bill Carey with Striper Express with your fishing tip this week on a Sportsman's Life. We talked about the thumper. Now we're going to talk about dead sticking. This is how we're catching our fish. Not my favorite way, but darn sure good way to put fish in the box. So these fish are running 60, 65 foot depths, about 40 foot down. You get your thumper going. You get your splasher. We didn't talk about that. That's a little trolling motor. We put an angle, just barely turn that. Splash, splash. The stripers are curious creatures. You don't have to mark a whole school of fish. The more you mark is better. Look for the birds, look for loons. And drift sock, long drifts, deep water. Every 30 seconds, I want you to just shake that jig just a hair. Just a hair. Just enough to cause a little action for that fish to take a look. Once you get them going, fish is on. You can catch, my goodness, we're catching fish up to 15 pounds, releasing 20, 30 a day. Over 20 inches, 50 fish catches. It's awesome on the right day. So if I need to tell you more, you can call us. But there's your fishing tip this week on A Sportsman's Life. Go catch a fish.
Conservation Today is brought to you by Hayden Outdoors Real Estate, the brand that sells the land. Visit HaydenOutdoors.com to find or sell your farm, ranch, or recreational property.
Whitetail deer are kind of the mainstay of North American hunting. As a wildlife biologist, I spent a lot of time working on whitetail deer, setting up management programs pretty much across Texas and a whole lot of other states as well too. And you know, we've got great variety in whitetail deer. They adapt to the area where they're from in terms of weather, in terms of temperature, in terms of habitat. You got the little Coues deer out in New Mexico, or cows deer, if you will, in Arizona and New Mexico, and down into all the way down into Mexico. But then you've also in Texas, in the western mountains above 4,500 feet, you've got the little fantail deer, which is arguably the smallest of the whitetail deer subspecies. It's comparable in size to a Florida Keys deer. And then in South Texas, you've got fair-sized bodies. In the hill country, you got maybe medium-sized bodies. And then you get up into the farther northern reaches, places like Kansas and Iowa and Illinois and Montana and Wyoming and parts of Colorado. And those deer have a tendency to, not a tendency, they have to be bigger so they can make it through the wintertime. There's a rule called Bergman's Law that within a species, the farther north you go, the bigger the bodies tend to be. And with that comes skeletal frame. And that skeletal frame is from what that antler is going to grow. So even though in South Texas we grow some really big deer, antler-wise, their bodies aren't necessarily all that big. But if you're interested in whitetail deer, get in touch with the Hayden Outdoors agents. These guys know the habitat, they know the terrain, they know the properties, they know what's capable of being produced on those properties in terms of antlers and the number of animals that can be harvested each year. And so if you're interested in buying a piece of property primarily for recreational purposes with the intent purpose of having whitetail deer and hunting whitetail deer, I would strongly suggest that you get in touch with those guys because they can provide you with all the information that you'll need and also give you really good ideas to potential is in a particular area for growing big bodies and big antlers. So interested in whitetail deer and owning property, get in touch with the Hayden Outdoors guys and they'll get you all set up.
Folks, thanks so much for joining us. This segment of our show is brought to us by Gearhead Archery, Snaplock Hunting Blinds, Smoking Texas Electric Smokers, TRHP Outdoors, Ultramatic Feeders, and Catfish Pro Catfish Bait and Catfishing Supplies. Make sure and tune in next week. We'll have another exciting show ready to go for you.